Science Journal for Kids and Teens presents Who Lives in Texas Groundwater? Adapted from the original peer-reviewed paper in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences of the United States of America. Published on January 14, 2019. Research conducted by Tom Devitt and colleagues of the Department of Integrative Biology, the University of Texas at Austin. Read by Nikita Kannan. Abstract. Did you know that some salamander species in Texas live in water underground and never see the light of day? Unfortunately, overuse of groundwater, pollution, and habitat loss threaten them with extinction. Before we can decide how best to protect these animals, we need to know more about them. For example, how many species are there? Where do they live? And what do they need to survive? To learn more, we collected DNA from salamanders living in the springs and caves of the Edwards-Trinity aquifer system in Texas. Differences in DNA showed that the individual salamanders we collected fall into 14 different species. 3 of those species were new discoveries. Then, we investigated how the different species were related, providing clues to how they evolved over millions of years. Introduction. The Edwards-Trinity aquifer system provides water for more than 2 million people in Texas. It is also home to dozens of species found nowhere else in the world. These include blind catfish, aquatic beetles, crustaceans, and many salamander species. For the curious. Unlike many amphibians, Edwards-Trinity salamanders are aquatic from the beginning of their lives to adulthood. They breathe through gills. Why are there so many salamander species there? Mainly because of natural barriers that separate species. Different combinations of species live in different watersheds. A watershed is an area of land where water falls as rain and collects underground and drains into a river. Although the salamanders are aquatic, they usually go with the flow and don't move far outside of their watershed. Scientists are racing to learn more about these salamanders. The groundwater that they need for survival is being used faster than it's being replaced through rainfall. If the groundwater disappears, their habitat will vanish and these species will go extinct. To learn more about these amazing amphibians, we asked, how many salamander species are there in the Edwards-Trinity aquifer system? How and when did they evolve? What does it mean for conservation of salamanders in groundwater in Texas? Image. It can be impossible to identify a salamander species with the naked eye. These two animals are actually the same species, Eurecia latitans. The top one was caught above ground and the bottom in a cave. Salamanders' adaptations. Salamanders are amphibians. Depending on the species and their life stage, larva or adult, amphibians may breathe through some combination of gills, lungs, and skin. Some salamanders have no lungs and rely primarily on their skin for gathering oxygen. Some have external gills. Species that have adapted to living underground have even lost their eyes, like the Texas blind salamander, E. rathbunni. Who needs eyes when you never see the light of day? Methods. Our study included 303 individual salamanders from 11 previously described species. We collected them from about 100 different springs and caves in the Edwards-Trinity system. We took samples of muscle or liver from each individual. These tissue samples provided us with individual DNA. Salamanders of the same species have similar DNA because they breed with each other. Salamanders from different species show more differences because they don't interbreed. By comparing differences in DNA, we can learn how and when species evolved from a common ancestor over millions of years. Like a family tree, we can show this in a branching diagram called an evolutionary or phylogenetic tree. Results. It turns out that there are more salamander species than we originally thought. We found 3 new salamander species. Figure 1 shows the main branches of the evolutionary tree, which also correspond to 4 different geographic regions. Some interesting results are that the oldest split between groups of species occurs across the Colorado River. This ancient divergence may be anywhere from 10 to 20 million years old. some populations that were previously thought to be Georgetown salamanders actually turned out to be salado salamanders, E. chisholmensis. We found enough similarity between two other species, E. latitans and E. tridentifera, to combine them into a single species. One of the new species is found only in a small area of the Pedernales River basin. The other two new species are found over a larger area in the western part of the aquifer. Figure 1. 14 salamander species are found in the Edwards-Trinity region. 3 of them are newly discovered species, in bold, and haven't been named yet. The evolutionary phylogenetic tree shows relatedness among individuals and species. The 4 colors represent the 4 main branches in the tree and geographical regions within the aquifer. Discussion. Natural barriers, such as divides between watersheds and different aquifers, provide additional evidence to help us separate sampled individuals into species. These natural barriers can be even more important than the distance between populations. For example, we found that the Berry Creek populations are actually salado salamanders, E. chisholmensis, even though they are found closer to nearby Georgetown salamanders, E. naufragia. Conclusion. Despite being mostly unseen, we should care about groundwater-dependent species because they tell us about the health of the water and the environment. For example, unseen microbes can help purify the water that people drink by breaking down chemicals that pollute it. Unfortunately, in some areas, groundwater levels have declined by hundreds of feet due to overuse. But there is hope. You can help save these salamanders and conserve groundwater by reducing your personal water footprint, the amount of water you use, including how much is used to grow the food you eat. Here are some ideas. Installing efficient toilets, shower heads, and appliances at home. Using native landscaping instead of lawns that require a lot of water. Collecting rainwater for irrigation, watering gardens and crops. Choosing foods that take less water to grow. Thank you for listening to this recording. Visit our website sciencejournalforkids.org for more free science teaching resources.